Yeah, and as Richie would say, Sunday day. And it is Sunday afternoon, nice and chilly, right here in South Florida. Man, I'm saying we're now past 60 to the Richie.
You know, sister, me have to draw for me reggae sweat. So it's a good opportunity for those of you out there who haven't availed yourself to a reggae hoodie.
Especially if it's up north. Yes. And you know the reason why them call it north? Because that's zero.
But let's talk about some music. Because today, we'll feature two big names in the business. The great George Nooks, a.k.a.
Prince Mohammed.
And then we're going to talk about, as well, bad man name, the man I used to call himself, Dillinger.
Dillinger.
You see here, Dennis Al Capone, Dillinger.
Yeah, man. Clint Eastwood.
All the bad man name, them, man. But today, we'll pick out one and we say Dillinger. A wicked name, the other guy.
Yeah, man. So yeah, Trinity. Too. Oh, Lord. Rankin Trevor.
But I think what is clear, though, is that the 1970s, the late 60s, 1970s, when the artists drew their names from what was pop culture at the time, and in those years, it was the gunman movie. You know, no other Jamaica have a problem with this gunman thing.
Well, I believe it go a little bit deeper than that, but we're not really getting into the psychology of the gun thing. Because I remember as a kid, you would see park rangers walking down the road with them shotgun over them hand. As a matter of fact, there was this lady who had a store, Miss Smiley, and you could go in there and you could buy a shotgun. You know, and this was early 70s. So, but then we had that Gun for Bible program, and then we had created this whole taboo around the gun thing. But you're right. The Western movies and the movies that featured Al Capone and Dillinger and Clint Eastwood, you know.
And those were the pop heroes at the time, from American pop culture. It was, we talk about 1970s, it was only what, 30, 40 years before when all of them bad man did them all. But Dillinger, what was his regular name?
Lester Randall
Bullock.
Yes.
Otherwise called Dillinger.
And in his early years, he used to go under the moniker Al Capone Jr. because he used to hang out with
Dennis Al
Capone and Lizzie and the El Paso sound systems. And, that's the kind of person he is. But let's kick it off with his first song on the Cloak and the Dagger rhythm. Them time they're done by Tommy McCook and the Upsetters, Lee Scratch Perry, a tune named Dub Organizer. Yes, the Dub Organizer by the one Dillinger.
There are a couple of things that we need to bring to the viewers and the listeners' attention, Garth, with respect to the particular tune, the rhythm, and just the general period. This is the 1970s. It was, people have this thing about DJ and dancehall music. Dancehall music emanates from this whole DJ phenomenon.
About 1971, 72.
This would have been 1970, 71, when couple of what we would have called at the time newer players were coming into the music production business. Certainly Lee Scratch Perry would have just left Joe Gibbs and is now looking to establish the Black Ark studio.
90,
the Observer, and then your boy from
Bonnie Lee
Farm.
Bonnie
Lee. And
of
then
course King Tubby.
On the other side is King Tubby's, who would have been finding his footing as a sound engineer, if you will.
And what's his name was also making his way to Yabiu.
Right. But at the time, when you hear, as the song says, the Dub Organizer, King Tubby is them to talk about, and of course, one of the I don't think Bonnie Lee gets enough credit for the role he played in establishing dub as a music form, because it was largely due to him and this whole context of the flying cymbal and all of that. And this is where this music was drawn from. As you talk about, listening to him at DJ or him a basically a roll with the bass. Him just left on top
Yeah,
of the bass.
that's the thing too. He matched key with the bass and also melody,
Right.
and which is what you really don't get nowadays. So, yeah.
At the time too, it also outlined it underlined the role that the sound system was playing, because all of this music which and a lot of what we're gonna play is music that would not normally have made it on the radio, and of course
At that time, no.
1970s. Yeah, at the time.
If you don't have a
1970s,
record player or going to the dance hall, you're not going to
if
hear
you're now
some
go
of
a
these
party,
songs.
let's go to
Or
yeah,
jukebox.
or the jukebox or the dance hall in particular, you're not gonna hear this kind of music, and so it was also showing the role that the sound system played in building the music at the time. This was, as I said, among his first efforts, and what we want to look at though, because he did a lot of work with a lot of the studio operators. I think by the time he made his mark, Coxsone, and when Coxsone pick you up, so Coxsone gonna remote his clothes, right? Because Coxsone recognized that this was
a talent to be.
The talent was there,
to
right?
be there, but with Dub Organizer, it never really did as well as they wanted to, and he did a couple of other singles with Yabi U and Augustus Pablo, and somebody was gonna play with Augustus Pablo. He did Bracer Boy, and of course, I think we're going to kind of hold out a little bit, Richie, and the biggest hit as far as I'm concerned. I mean, on record, his biggest hit is Cocaine in My Brain because of its international acclaim, but in our eyes, as you know, his biggest hit was CB 200. But let's not jump the gun. Let's go for Freshly done for Yabi U, Bracer Boy for Augustus Pablo, and Flatfoot Hustling for Winston Wholeness. Scuffling and hustling, in Jamaica, when you scuffle a thief, you're a thief, you don't know that.
But this is the term flatfoot hustling.
Flatfoot hustling, which
Because
means grab and flee.
In those days, and like now, where almost everybody have a car or some sort of a motoring device. In them days, most everywhere you go, people walk.
10-foot turbo.
Right?
Or 10-toe turbo.
10-toe turbo. And, which is why shoes like Clarks and everything became so popular because it was comfortable walking shoes.
And it didn't wear that easily.
Right. But to the music itself, though, going back to the Freshly. Freshly was his earliest piece. I think that was produced, that came out of Scratchberry, the Scratchberry arrangement. And it basically was talking about Rastaman avoiding meat and them kind of thing, right? Is a Rasta.
Yeah, actually it was Yabi U who did that production.
It was Yabi U.
Yabi U.
And but it was pretty popular at the time.
Yes, and talk about Rasta not eat inside the rake and him not eat steak.
And him come out of the kitchen kind of want no chicken and them kind of thing.
Something about mutton.
Yeah, but again, his play on the rhymes and so on.
Yeah, and being a Rastaman, Richie, you don't eat deaders.
Yeah, you don't eat deaders, not to dread, no eat deaders, not with feathers and all them kind of thing. But it was the music coming out of the period, the heavy dub. And again, it highlight, I really need to do a program on the influence of tubbies and the dub music. Because
Tubby.
this is the heights of the dub now establishing itself. And we really don't talk about dub music as a music category.
About the dub aesthetics.
There you go. I think Dr. Howard wrote a book on that, about dub in the dancehall, sort of thing. But and then of course the Dennis Brown anthem, Here I Come Again.
Yes. Here I Come Again, Have No Fear. Because remember, I have another one in a Here I Come. So this one is 1974. Here I Come Again, Have No Fear. That was the name of the song.
The other thing to that comes out of the songs of the period too was it basically tells you what was going on. 1975, 76, the country is changing, high unemployment rates,
high gas prices,
everything is going
through the roof.
Inflation through the roof. People
Just like
can't
what's
get a
happening
job
here in the US today.
By the time around the same time, the whole bus service had started to break down. The power failures and so on. And these artists were capturing this in the songs. You know, when you talk about Flatfoot hustling, a whole heap of things support Flatfoot hustling.
Yes.
If Flatfoot hustling a thief.
Grab and flee.
If you can not put on nothing in your yard,
yes.
right? That no nail down in it because a man come, your lawnmower gone, right? If your door and window them not properly secure, grab and flee, man. Worse, you walk on the street with your handbag, grab and flee.
Yeah, man. Breaking and entering.
Yeah. It was just, him using the songs to tell you what was going on in the period. And this was just the beginning of what I call the socioeconomic decadence that
and if
would take over
if you
Jamaica.
also listen to the things that were said, as a matter of fact, when I listen and as we go through this hour with Dillinger, you'll realize how he even honed his craft and became a much better, became a much better artist. He did a couple of more songs. He had Natty Kung Fu and Kung Fu Fighting, and I think those were done for Coxsondall in 1976.
Well, we need to remind the listeners to that how he got his name at
Dillinger from Mr. Randall Block.
He was
government name. Lester Randall Block.
Masquerading under Dennis Al Capone as Dennis Al Capone Jr.
That man was his idol.
Right, and then Perry realized him had some potential and figured you need to travel on your own identity, and he said. Al Capone established already a Dillinger your name. Dillinger a
bad boy.
Thing. So, again, the bad man association, because all of these gunfighter names, it's a bad man thing, whether it's coming out and all of them come from North America. So it also tell you again just how much influence the North American culture had on the developing Jamaican culture, and in particular, the music. But back to you, Garth.
Yeah, man, we're going to enter Roy Richards with the Freedom Blues.
Oh, my goodness.
On the B side, as it were, or on the 12-inch mix, which was coming out at that time in the late mid-70s, 76, 77, with Joe Gibbs. You had Freedom Blues and extended mix featuring Dillinger. So we're going to kick it off. And, this was a cover version for Little Richard Freedom Blues that Roy Richards did such a good rendition of.
Natty Dread on the ball and a Babylon fall.
Yeah, man. Carib on a Saturday morning, triple bill, all kickers. Otherwise, those kung fu movies.
It's ironic as they say
Wang
Carib.
Yu, Chen Sing, Silver Fox, Carter Wang,
Listen,
Jackie Chan.
All of these lyrics coming straight off of the screen. For me, I watch most of these kickers at Rialto, the open air theater Rialto. The one-armed swordman with Wang Yu.
Yes,
and then they have Chen Sing.
That's
then
a
we go
cult
check
classic.
Chen Sing and we hear them sing.
Yeah, man.
But again, it just showed the ingenuity of the producers at the time to just capture whatever it is that represented the popular culture of the time.
Which gives rise to what we always say. If you want to know what's happening in Jamaica,
listen to the music.
Listen to the music.
Right? This was the era of the kickers and the Carib, not
And
so much.
Spaghetti westerns.
Well, the spaghetti westerns were the earlier 70s, but the kickers came in the late part of the 70s.
Yeah, mid to late 70s. But what I was saying though, Richie, is that Carib don't bring them thing there on a Sunday night and Saturday. It's Saturday morning matinee.
Matinee.
Yes.
But you go to the place where you watch kickers is State Theatre on Half a Tree Road, right? And between State, Regal, Carib as a matinee, and then you come down in the ghetto now, Kings and
Yeah,
Rialto.
because what used to happen is that Like what's happening in America, once the movie goes from the cinema, then you have these smaller offshoot theaters that will show the movies again. So in Jamaica, you had Palace Entertainment, which was Palace right at South Camp Road and Victoria Avenue right there. And then you'd have like Carib. These are your grade A cinemas. And so once you're finished with a show, then they would go to like Odeon and Rialto and these other smaller.
Gaiety, Kings. Listen, that's what me live in a party. Gaiety, Kings, Majestic, Odeon, Deluxe, all of them. But the point though is, you know, the culture was influenced largely by what we saw, and the music culture to a large extent took its cue from what was on the screens, and the producers reamed that out. A lot of this music, again, as we say, was never played on the radio. You want to hear this kind of music, you have to go to a dance, or as you say, the jukebox. And then it made its way overseas, and I think that's what really drove the music after a while. People like Dillinger, you know, surprisingly, once he hit, because there are a couple of songs that he did that weren't particularly popular in Jamaica, but in England, those songs did well, and it allowed him to tour. And in fact, that sort of cemented him with the audience. We talked about him doing some work with Coxsone, who, of course, what Coxsone is, you know, you have to give him credit. He's an opportunist. He sees something that he figure him can monetize it, and he did exactly that. In fact, there was a story he said that when he went to Coxsone, they did an album, his initial album. I think we're coming up on a break, and we probably get back to that thing. But his initial album with Coxsone, when the album broke, Coxsone realized that one of the tunes that would have done phenomenally well, and Coxsone take it off of the album and reissue the album without it, because he wanted to make sure he maximize the use of the thing. But we're on a break. Let's take that and we come back.
Listen.
And we're back. So Richie, you were saying that
when he went to Coxsone, he did the album Ready Natty Dready, but the tune that was carrying the album was a tune named Kilimanjaro, which was a brute of a tune. I remember, that was my Harborview days. And what Coxsone did, Coxsone realized that the tune was that good, and he wanted to ream the tune as a single. And so Coxsone reissued the album, take off the Kilimanjaro off of the album and reissue it. And then issued the Kilimanjaro as a single. And that single was one of the tunes that really pushed Dillinger as a DJ, because of course we know that, again, we talked earlier about the sound system. Kilimanjaro was one of the wickedest sound system in Kingston
which is the song that the part B on the Freedom Blues.
Right.
That's the Kilimanjaro.
Well, I think you should allow the listeners to get a taste of that Kilimanjaro, because it also tells you, again, his ability to ride a rhythm. And something else that is a big feature of the period to Garth. Making music was expensive, even though it wasn't that much of an expensive time. But for the average artist to put out a rhythm, or a producer to get musicians to produce a rhythm, the idea was to try to maximize the use of the rhythm as much as possible, right? And this was because the Freedom Blues rhythm was Coxsone's studio band. What was it? With Roy Richards, the whole of the Tommy
Soul Vendors.
The Soul Vendors. The rhythm was created by the Soul Vendors. And this, again, was Coxsone maximizing the use of the rhythm. But I think, rather than talk about, let's give the listeners a taste.
Hit it back from 1:40 into the song. And you'll hear right at the beginning, this is Kilimanjaro. Richie, listening to these songs, one of the things that popped out to me was the Natty Dread identity and bringing Rastafari mainstream. So you have to talk about the culture, you have to talk about Rastafarians, like, and one of the big songs in the 1976, because that's the year we're in at that time, was a tune named Natty BSC. And the Things on Time rhythm.
Natty pass him JSC.
Yeah, man.
Natty pass him GCE.
And for those of you who wonder what the acronym JSC is.
Jamaica School Certificate.
Yes. Jamaica School Certificate.
Jamaica, in fact, that was the first level of exams you do as you go into the secondary school.
Especially if you didn't pass the common entrance, you would take that to go to your grade 9, also the grade 9 achievement test. So you go straight into an all-age school, as it were, or a technical high school. But let's listen to Natty BSC, Dillinger. Yes, the teeth and the tongue will tell, so Natty pass him BSc, which is a higher degree. And, you know, at that time, I think, was it late 70s, early 80s, that Lloyd Stanbury became the first dreadlocked lawyer. And that was a big thing too, you know, so.
You know, you say it like a joke.
No, but the fight that Rastafarians faced in Jamaica, when as a Rastaman you make certain strides, that was something that caused you to lift your head up as a Rastaman because you were ostracized by society and, you know.
Yeah, but
rough.
Again, Rasta and their role in pushing reggae music, because the two, there's a what you call a, I mean, but use a $50 word, a symbiotic relationship between Rasta and reggae music, and you really cannot separate the two, because, you know, again, thanks to we give Bob Marley a whole heap of props, but there were a lot of other people behind Marley or other than Marley who were out there plugging away at this thing. And one of them, to Burning Spear, we don't talk about him. Dillinger sampled some of his own music too. Again, it was that mid-70s where the conscious, because what Rasta represented was is a liberty. You know, Hyacinth, who had as a guest on a couple of weeks ago, talked about Rasta and the liberty, because Rasta wasn't necessarily seen as a religion. It was a liberty. It was a sort of a way of life.
It's a way of life.
And of course, the music spoke to that, peace and love, and, you know, the goodwill and, you know, clean living, that sort of thing. And of course, the other side of it is, you know, you burn the Haitians, which is your way of giving thanks. But the music traveled, you know, alongside the two, developed as an integral part of Jamaica's culture. And you have to celebrate a man like a Dillinger, who was not shy about taking the events that he was experiencing and transferring that to song.
And I want to play a couple of more songs, Richie, that highlighted and also showed his evolution as a DJ. And especially on this song, which was 1977, a song named You Me Love.
Yeah, I think the significance of this song in particular was that this was Dillinger taking advantage of what was pop culture. We get a lot of,
and there those blaxploitation movies.
Blaxploitation. Yeah, the JJ Walker,
and What's Happening,
Jimmy
TV.
Walker with What's Happening.
Yeah.
So that twangy effect, if you will, was him creating a song to sort of get into that market, and it was successful. I think he got a record deal with A&M. Deal never really lasted long, but it provided an opening in the door for him, and it also helped him establish himself within the North America market, and at the same time too in the UK, because it was always very popular, and he would revisit this theme again down the road. The cocaine thing never worked so good for him in Jamaica.
So he did Marijuana and My Brain.
He did Marijuana,
which is an honorable mention. And then he also did another one, talked about LSD use.
Yeah, but we're not too much of the druggist thing there. But of course, he was, when he did that album with A&M, again, the politics and the bad man thing in Jamaica was always still the influence. And I think, you know, a lot of the music now was picking up some of that bad man theme. The theme never worked for him on the North America side, but it did well for him in Jamaica, where regardless, he was still very popular. And for him as a DJ coming out of the 70s to be holding him own in the 1980s when the music is changing, when you have big vocal artists, because the 80s was that early part of the 80s was a period when people like Dennis Brown, Gregory Isaacs, you know, all of these big vocalists were out there and holding them on. And he still managed to get a piece of the action. Again, I think a big part of that was the Channel One.
And one of those songs, Richie, was a big bad song that came out in the Ballistic Affair by Leroy Smart, where he did Eastman Skank. And Eastman Skank is also just bigging up all of the men who live out of East, which is Rockford, that kind of era. I know you're Rockford, man, still.
Mountain View.
Yes, sir.
Harbour View.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, but again, as you said, the music is talking about what was going on.
So let's give the listeners a piece of Eastman Skank and a couple more pieces as we wrap up Mr. Dillinger in the next couple of minutes. Crash program, informal way to put people to work.
It was a way to put money in the economy. The economy was under pressure at the time, and the Manley administration came up with this project of keeping the streets clean. You know, listen, I don't even want to go back down that road because there's so many negatives associated with it. And even today, 100 years later, we still not recover from it. Yeah. Nice. But again, this is the artist utilizing what was happening on the street and basically putting it into song. The socialism would have been, you know, high on the agenda. It would have featured in the election that would follow in the late, 1980 election, and the people kick out the PNP after the so-called failed socialist experiment. People are cleaning the street, which is what the crash program thing was. Everybody get a broom, and every week you see them gang up at the street corner. I wait for the man and come with the money. And in those days, you pay cash. So you have all kind of man on the payroll who lay down in a Maypen cemetery, but people are collect for them pay. Not a nice thing. Big tune that Dillinger put out, though, to me, his biggest tune would have been CB 200.
CB 200, Richie. I remember this
up a plantation night, to check father.
And make sure so you have your rag in your back pocket.
Yeah, man. It was
put your hand forward to make it come like you're up on a bike.
Yeah, it was the time. And it was also a follow-up to, because Big Youth had come out with S90 Skank.
Yes.
But CB 200
and then there was another one to Yama Skank. There was a whole heap of bike tune at the time.
But CB 200 was a big tune and one of the biggest tunes.
And the man actually brought a bike into the studio and rev out the engine and things. So let's wrap up Mr. Dillinger and ride him out of here upon a CB 200. Yes. And we're back.
What a man shirt, pretty man.
Yeah, I'm saying, forgot to do one of them shirts.
He's killing, man. He's driving it. But again, this for this segment of the show, we're going to look at another man who has made a big impact, still active too in the music.
Yes, even though he's doing gospel.
Yeah, he has basically taken, he went on a road to Damascus, he saw the great light, and so he has opted to go into the church part of the business. But we're talking none other than George Nooks, who had a sort of a dual career guy. There was the first part of his life in the music business, he
was George Nooks
under the moniker of,
and then he became Prince Mohammed. And then him go back to George Nooks.
Which one was first?
Remember he did Tribal War in 1977.
Yes, it was George Nooks.
Yes.
Right. But he had been in the music business before that. He started out in the early 1974. And again, here's a man who come from the church. So I'm not surprised that he would ultimately find his way. Mr. Eddie Seattle was saying, sing a Sankey, light a candle and sing a Sankey, and him find his way back to the. But he came out of the.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com, where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.